It's easy to see movies as a stable art form. The general elements we see today have been around forever, but this simply isn't the case. The early decades of film saw rapid changes, and one of the most critical changes was the development and popularity of Technicolor. Color is a tool that we now take for granted, but it fundamentally changed how movies are made. Use of color provided a new element that filmmakers could use to communicate messages in film, making movies before and after the development of Technicolor notably different. In this video, we're going to concentrate on the use of color to create contrast, symbolism, and spectacle. Technicolor was developed by two MIT professors, Herbert Kalmus and Daniel Comstock. Over a series of 4 major iterations, the process approached a system that uses a prism beam to split red, green, and blue light. These colors were all recorded on separate films and using a subtractive process, which was inherently different from the process used by their competitors, was ultimately stitched together on what is called a matrix sheet. Technicolor in film allowed for more bold and vibrant contrasts that highlighted differences between different cultures, characters, or lifestyles, and ensured that certain elements captured the audience's attention. The first version of Ramona, made in 1910, was 22 minutes long, had no sound, and of course was in black and white. Because the movie was filmed so early, the visuals in general are rather dark and dull. Ramona's mother's extravagant clothing is less noticeable and contrasting in comparison to Ramona's. Nothing about their clothing catches the audience's eye, except maybe the sheer size. However, the 1936 version of Ramona showed a much more significant contrast between Ramona's clothing and her mother's. This movie was the 4th ever to be shot with the 3-strip Technicolor process. With more colorful costumes and backgrounds, the contrast between the dresses and backgrounds better illustrated the distinct personalities of each character. For example, Ramona's mother's dark dress is often contrasted against light backgrounds, making the mother seem more dark, sullen, and pessimistic, while Ramona's white dress is often contrasted with the dark backgrounds, making her appear bright, cheery, vivid, and almost angelic. Contrast is used similarly in the 1939 film epic Gone with the Wind, where Scarlett's many white dresses in the beginning of the movie evoke an angelic aura, since she is the brightest thing on screen. Color contrast also helps to establish Rhett as a hero in scenes where his bright white clothes are contrasted with the darkness around him. The use of contrast allowed Gone with the Wind to become iconic for its silhouettes, where the backgrounds emit light instead of the characters. This creates a focus on the larger scale of the war and the country as a whole, instead of the characters' individual stories. In Showboat, when we first meet Gaylord, his bright blue clothing, contrasted with the duller clothing of the people around him, immediately signals to the audience that he is an important character to watch. Similarly, the dull, empty streets of the town at the beginning of the film help emphasize the vibrancy and excitement the arrival of the showboat is. This helps to establish how the showboat brought life and energy to the cities it visited along the river. Lack of contrast is particularly relevant in Red-Headed Woman. Jean Harlow was iconic for her platinum blonde hair, so audiences back in 1932 would have noticed that it was darker. But the majority of her later audiences wouldn't be able to tell that she had red hair because of the lack of color contrast in black and white film. Jean Harlow's red hair epitomized her characteristics of passion, desire, lust, and sexuality. This was crucial color symbolism, which we will expand on next. Semiotics is the exploration of how signs and symbols impart meaning to an audience, often subconsciously. When you watch a film, the visuals on screen communicate beyond their literal meaning and create a certain symbolic meaning. In our minds, we associate different objects with different emotions or ideas, and films can take advantage of this. The introduction of color into film, it creates an entirely new dimension to semiotics, drawing on the emotions and themes that audiences associate with different hues. Color symbolism is used heavily in Gone with the Wind. As an epic, the film incorporates massive universal themes into the Civil War and Reconstruction-era story of Scarlett O'Hara through the use of color, predominantly the colors green and red. These colors are used to illustrate many ideas over the course of the film. At a party in the beginning of the film, Scarlett meets the fiancé of Ashley, the man she secretly loves. She flirts with and completely captivates the rest of the men at the party, but she cannot successfully win over the only man she really wants. Her envy is communicated certainly by her behavior and facial expressions, but also by the green dress she wears. In other scenes, green is more aligned with the theme of monetary greed and wealth. Scarlett wears green in the scene where she goes to manipulate Rhett in order to gain money to pay her estate taxes, and in scenes where she goes and ruthlessly pursues success for her logging business. Red, on the other hand, helps emphasize violence and passion. The characters themselves use color to express the idea of promiscuity. When rumors abound over Scarlett expressing her love for Ashley, Red forces her to go to a party wearing a red dress. Later, Scarlett wears a red gown when she and Rhett fight about their relationship and her love for Ashley, culminating in Rhett being physically violent with her. Her clothing reflects the intensity of the conflict and anger in the scene and helps focus the narrative. In a black and white film, there may be a compelling story, thoroughly developed characters, and a famous cast of top-tier actors, but without color, a film cannot truly display the spectacle and grandeur of its scenes. Showboat 1936 is a black and white film that stars the likes of 5-time Oscar nominee Irene Dunne and Academy Award winner Hattie McDaniel, both very accomplished actresses. The story conveys a very compelling depiction of Edna Ferber's novel, but the film's depiction of show life pales in comparison to the 1951 color version. As Captain Andy Hawks leads the parade into the city, the audience should feel a sense of awe or being able to distinguish the showboat performers from normal bystanders, but is near impossible to do so. The only indicators to the audience that this parade is a special event are the dances and smiles on everyone's faces. It just seems too bland. In the second installment of Showboat, there's an entirely different feeling. Performers disperse through the streets in vibrant shades of red, green, and yellow, colors that no common man or woman would wear. There's a real sense of hectic and lush atmosphere being conveyed. These performers were no mere common folk. They have devoted their lives to the ragtag, nomadic life of the Circus of the Sea, and the color conveys this to the audience. It conveys a sense of originality, a sense of not fitting in, and a sense that this parade is just about as opposite to the dull daily life that the town can get. One of the best examples of color enhancing the impact of storytelling is the difference between the 1910 and 1936 adaptations of the film Ramona. While the 1910 film was shot in Ventura County, California, the exact spot in which the book was intended to take place, the 1936 film was shot in various locations in Utah and California. One would think that the 1910 film shot on location would better embody the story, but the color movie captivates viewers with vibrant landscape shots. Technicolor allowed filmmakers to take full advantage of color to enhance the meaning and impact of films. Using contrast, certain differences of characters, cultures, or perspectives were visually represented to the audience. Through color symbolism, visuals were able to better facilitate the communication of thematic meaning. The sense of awe and spectacle that color visuals added to movies additionally made film more of an emotional and memorable experience. Technicolor had major emotional impacts on the audience, enhanced storytelling, and ultimately changed how movies were made as a whole.